Xeriscaping can reduce water used for landscaping by 50 to 80%. This reduction of water usage can be astonishing when one considers the amount of water our community uses, about 265 million gallons per year on landscaping at a cost of $304,935. If we cut water use in half, we will save 132.5 million gallons and $150,000. The second and best reason for xeriscaping our downtown district is the drought that we are presently experiencing. The need for people to conserve water is crucial. Our city leaders need to set an example by reducing the city's own water consumption. It is time that our community leaders take the qualities that they hope to instill in their citizens and put them to practice. I propose that members of our city council add xeriscaping to their future landscaping plans, as well as areas that have already been landscaped. Grassy areas are only needed in the park where children play and families picnic. Replacing 200 of the 400 acres of grass will also save the city endless hours of mowing, pounds of fertilizer, and approximately $20,000 of maintenance costs per year, on top of the $150 zero saved by reduced water consumption. Surely the City Council can spend $170,000 per year on something more useful to our community than grass. Water conservation has been ignored too long. Efforts must Which sentence best expresses a theme of the passage? A. Nature is bizarre and fascinating. B. Humans are selfish and needy. C. Reality is simple and predictable. D. Truth is elusive and intimidating. Going up that river was like traveling back to the earliest beginnings of the world, when vegetation rioted on the earth and the big trees were kings. An empty stream, a great silence, an impenetrable forest. The air was warm, thick, heavy, sluggish, and there was no joy in the brilliance of sunshine. The long stretches of the waterway ran on, deserted, into the gloom of overshadowed distances, and on silvery sandbanks hippos and alligators sunned themselves side by side. The broadening waters flowed through a mob of wooded islands. You lost your way. There were moments when one's past came back to one, as it will sometimes when you have not a moment to spare to yourself, but it came in the shape of an unrestful and noisy dream, remembered with wonder amongst the overwhelming realities of this strange world of plants, and water, and silence. And this stillness of life did not in the least resemble a peace. It was the stillness of a relentless force brooding over a mysterious intention. It looked at you with a vengeful aspect. I got used to it after a while. Which statement best explains why the author chooses to include a flashback in this passage? A. To show how the narrator I achieved the unofficial smart. His name was George, after our nation's first president, and we were introduced in when our teacher began asking basic. But when Mr. Hartley inquired about the aardvark's natural habit, exploded the dual shout, followed by snickering from the rest of the class. I peeked in the direction of the other voice, to see George gazing directly ahead, as though he was oblivious to anyone else. Surely, he perceived the awkwardness of this circumstance, and had the abrupt comprehension that there was another smart kid in the school. When the bell rang and students began jostling out the door, I hung back, thinking that I should at least introduce myself to George. He had waited for everyone else to push out of the classroom as well, and I extended my hand toward him with a smile. I just wanted to let you know that I plan to outdo you in every class we have together this semester, and every. I was left in shock at his words, at the audacity of his confidence and conceit. After standing immobile for a few moments, I ducked out the side door of the classroom. George perceived me as a. When the regional science fair was announced, I knew George had already begun working on his entry, as I had. On the day of presentations, as professors from the local universities strolled among poster board displays and homemade volcanoes, I had a clear view of George's project. When he detected my surveillance, George began sauntering toward me and I planted my feet firmly, steeling myself for the verbal assault. "Is this your first science fair?" he inquired, observing my display critically. "I want to make you aware that I'm going to. You're going to beat me at you're going." George smirked, self-satisfied. Anger surged through me. But it was imperative. By November, George was playing. Which sentence is most likely meant to create suspense for the reader? Stealing the Day by Samantha G. Excerpt. I achieved the unofficial Smart Kid designation in elementary school, and it was not until years later that I met someone who threatened to depose me from my reign. His name was George, after our nation's first president, and he had been the smartest kid in school during his early academic career as well, but George grew up on the other side of town, so we had really never crossed paths. We were introduced in our biology class. Surely, he perceived the awkwardness of this circumstance. When the bell rang and students began jostling out the door, I hung back, thinking that I should at least introduce myself. His name was George, after our Which narrative technique could best enhance the passage? A. Character development to visualize how the narrator and server look. B. My dad used to say there aren't really foods he doesn't like, just foods that he hasn't liked yet. I'm inclined to agree with him because there's a clear line of demarcation in my life, days of beet disdain and beet delight. Have you ever had a yellow beet? Me neither, until an unsuspecting visit to Atwood's Cafe on an otherwise ordinary day. The lunch crowd buzzed as I sat at a table for two near the door, surveying the menu until I landed on a list of appetizing ingredients. Bib lettuce, asparagus, goat cheese, pistachios, and yellow beets with a lemon dill vinaigrette. Dressing on the side and hold the beets. That was my first inclination. "What can I get for you today?" my server asked. "I'd like your Bib lettuce salad with dressing on side and no beets, please," I ordered. "Have you ever had yellow beets?" my server inquired, peering over the rim of his glasses like my dad. "Actually, no," I replied sheepishly. "It's a texture thing, they seem so slimy. Ours are delicious. Give them a try and, if you don't like them, I'll bring you a beet-free salad." And he was off before I could object. Which narrative technique could best enhance the passage? A. Character development to visualize how the narrator and server look. B. A reflection to acknowledge how the server's offer prompted a change in the narrator. C. Dialogue that gives voice to other patrons who are part of the lunchtime buzz. D. Additional description of the cafe and market to establish the setting. Dialogue that gives voice. How does the author develop Maggie and her mother's relationship in the excerpt?